Hello, MotoAmerica fans. Welcome to this latest edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. I'm Sean Bice, content manager. I'm joined by Paul Carruthers, our communications manager. And I don't even know why I'm saying that. We're well over 300 and whatever episodes at this point. But it's high time that we had this lady on, Mallory Dobbs, who we've talked to her about being on before, but it was cool that she raced last weekend. And we'll talk about that and a bunch of other things. But I do have to point out to all of you guys that as we're recording this, so it's 8 in the morning where Paul is, it's 11 o'clock where I am, and it's 5 o'clock where Mallory is, and she can tell us where she is, but it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for all of us. So Mallory, welcome. And you're in Barcelona, I believe, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm currently in Barcelona, living in a hotel for about 10 days until head to my next adventure. So, yeah, just kind of staying in Europe in between race rounds since there was only 2 weeks in between round one and round two. It didn't really make a lot of sense to go home. So, here I am.
Yeah, and I think Sonia's actually somewhere over. She's there with her dad, I believe, isn't she?
Yeah, I think I saw a post that she was still in Milan, so she's just hanging out in
Okay.
Italy. Yeah.
Okay. How about you? I mean, I guess Andrew Lee, also one of our favorites we're gonna see him at Road Atlanta.
Yeah.
He's with you, he's not with you, right? I mean,
No,
tell us,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so we just had our first round in the Netherlands, so I got to race in Assen last weekend, which was really cool. I'd never been there. And yeah, he unfortunately had to miss it. He's got, his own racing stuff going on and work and everything else. So he missed the first round and then he's missing the second one because it's the same weekend as Road Atlanta. So it's a little tough, but I went from the Netherlands to Barcelona to be closer to some people over here with motorsports stuff. So like yesterday, I got to ride Aspar Circuit for 2 days. Actually, I borrowed a bike from YVS Sabadell. They're a really great dealership that helped out like Anna and a lot of the girls over here. And so I rented a bike and got to ride 2 days over while I'm here. So it's not for nothing to stay in Europe to be able to do stuff. But yeah, it's tough being away from home. I think I'm on day like 30-ish of being away right now, and I miss yeah, Andrew and my dog and all that stuff. So
Does it seem crazy to you? I know you got a late start with motorcycling. I think I read that you were 22 before you'd even ridden any kind of motorcycle.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
now here you are and you're racing at places like Assen. Like, I mean, that seems like
yeah.
just it's almost unbelievable to me. I can imagine what it's like for you.
Yeah, it's so hard because it's like sometimes I'm like, I want to do better and I get so down because, like stuff happens and there's crashes and maybe we don't do as well as we hope and my performance coach sometimes has to remind me like, "Hey, your resume is not that long compared to these girls that have been doing this since they were, 6 or 5 or whatever." And yeah, I didn't get my first bike until I was 22 years old and I rode for about 6 months before I started racing motorcycles. And then, yeah, I did my first MotoAmerica round in 2022 after, 5 years of club racing, basically. And yeah, it's been a very steep learning curve for sure.
Because that's got to be the hardest part, I would think, is the fact that you are racing with other girls who have been riding motorcycles since they were 3 or 4 and riding dirt track and riding motocross
Yeah.
and doing all this stuff. And you jump in, they're advanced to here, and you're jumping in here and you're trying to catch up. All the while they're getting better as well. So is that
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's
And then,
not an impossible task, obviously, but you've got to
hmm.
have realistic expectations.
Yeah, and it's really hard because it's like sometimes, like Andrew has helped me a ton and Jason Pridmore, with my riding. And there's certain things that like I've had to work on my riding over the past, 2 years with this crazy trajectory of my, racing career. And it's like some things that I'm learning or having to like relearn, or just never something that I haven't worked on before that I'm like, oh, like Andrew's like, well, why do you do it this way? And I'm like, I don't know. I never learned it any other way. I never worked on it. And so a lot of stuff that I kind of had to like work on later and that now that I'm at this level, so it is hard because there's things that I probably should already be doing but I didn't because I don't have the resume. I never sat and learned the fundamentals of certain things. So yeah, it's been a lot, right? The past 2 years I've seen probably a pretty big growth in my my riding ability and stuff, and it's been a challenge, and at some points it's really hard to like stay positive about it all, but at the same time I do get to ride like Assen and Jerez and all these places, Valencia, like just really cool places in Europe that I never would have gotten to do otherwise. So,
Hmm.
it's worth it.
So you've raced with us in Supersport. In fact, the first time I ever met you was at Ridge, and you were racing Supersport that first time. And
Yeah.
you've raced with us in Super Hooligan on a Ducati. Or was it? Yeah, it was a Ducati Hyper Motard.
Yep.
Yes. So you've ridden other bikes against in classes where there are other motorcycles. Now you're in this spec class where
Hmm.
they're all the same motorcycle, and I guess maybe it comes down to the experience, the talent, the racecraft of the individual person. Do you like that kind of racing?
I think it's good because it's definitely like there's no excuse that says like, oh, their bike is faster than mine, right? But it is something that like I was just mentioning about like my riding skills and stuff is like there's a lot of things I did on my super sport bike that weren't necessarily highlighted because I did have a fast bike and I was smaller, right? And now on an R7, like the time it takes for me to go from throttle to brake, like that transition was maybe not as quick and snappy as it should be. Well, in a spec class, if I don't have that and I'm wasting that time, that's free time. Like, it's just like it's so small and minute of everything that adds up. Like the lap times we're talking about are all really, really close, right? We're all within 2 to 3 seconds of the leader, and all those little things add up. And so it's definitely like, working on those things in my riding ability that I wouldn't have had to do when I was in super sport, and I've talked about a little bit of like if I go back to super sport and ride my ZX6 again, like how much better I would be of a
Yeah,
rider doing all
yeah,
these things that I'm doing right now on this bike and applying them to that bike, right?
yeah.
Excuse me for my ignorance on this, but I know it's a spec class, but I'm trying to picture this in my mind. Do the bikes all come together in one semi and everyone works
Yeah, so
together under an awning?
we actually we don't own our bikes, right? It's a leasing program from Yamaha JIR. So essentially, we pay the entry fee. They have the bikes, they give us a chassis, and then that's our bike for the season. We only see the bikes during the race round. So Thursday and move in, we see it on Thursday, and we're allowed to work on the bikes while we're there. But they stay underneath the canopy that they all set up. Like the area is all the same. Everybody has to be in the same area. All the parts are from a parts list. Like it's all the exact same. And then nobody gets to take their bikes home or do anything with them. So after the weekend's over, they get loaded in the truck and then they get taken to the next race round.
And do you have a crew? I mean, is it the same crew every time, a mechanic, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have to bring our own crew. So I brought my crew chief from MotoAmerica, Don Beck with Superbike Underground. He's been around in MotoAmerica and Superbikes forever. And then, I brought another mechanic this year because it's really hard to do with one. But his name's Graham Parker, and he works with like TT guys over in the UK. And it was just easier to do it that way because it's really expensive to obviously bring multiple people from America over here. So yeah, we're actually liable for bringing all of our own crew, and
Wow.
then we can bring them in and out as we need, for the rounds.
Yeah, and we know too that the bike, they're the same bikes that they used in that Jerez, City of
Mhm.
Jerez thing
Mhm.
at the end of the year. In fact, somebody
Yep.
was probably riding your motorcycle. You may not know who it
Yeah.
was, but right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and it definitely like those. So yeah, it was the same bikes we used all last season for the championship, and then they got used for the Intercontinental Games, and
that's
then
it.
basically we picked back up, and then the bikes are the same as last year. So there was definitely some things that we had to like fix from some of those bikes when we got them for our test at Cremona. They said that they were prepped, but some of those bikes at the Intercontinental Games did not have a good time. So there's definitely some things that had to be looked at.
Yeah. One of the things I want to ask you, so, Jason Pridmore, you've had coaching from him, obviously, Andrew and other people. And there is this idea that people can tell you to do stuff or what you should be doing, but you have to ultimately do it. So when you're out there and you're doing what they tell you to do or what you can see to do, when you're looking at riders like Maria Herrera or Ana Carrasco or whatever, do you look at them and go, I can see what they're doing, I just need to get there? Or do you sometimes go, I don't know how they're doing what they're doing? Because I have that happen when I watch Cameron Bobier on the track. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm like, I don't even know how he does that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's actually funny you mentioned that because I rode yesterday, like I said, at Aspar, and I rode with Anna Carrasco and Beatrice Niela. And yeah, those girls are insane on a motorcycle. And there are some things that I can see that I'm like, okay, yeah, I just need to figure out how to do that, or I need to start implementing that. But then there's other times where I'm like, the corner speed they can carry, I'm like, I don't understand how I can like roll into a corner and then you roll out and I have 5 bike links. Like, how does this happen?
Right.
So yeah, sometimes it is hard. Like I have to like kind of rack my brain of like, okay, like what is it that I'm doing that I need to fix, but especially with the littler bikes, and we talked about a little bit with Supersport is like when I rode a Supersport bike, my entries into corners weren't always the best, right? My braking isn't very good, but my exits are great. Well, on a little bike, a twin, a 400, whatever it may be, like you actually need to carry the roll speed and the exit doesn't really matter, especially in a spec class. I mean, it does, but it's different, right? You have to carry the roll speed because you don't have the horsepower to get out. So then now I have to like relearn how to ride as well on like roll speed versus like, okay, point and shoot. And so that was a really big learning curve last year that I had to learn was how to carry roll speed into a corner.
Do you trust the tires?
Yeah, we're on Pirellis, so it is nice to go back to those. I haven't been on Pirelli since before my MotoAmerica days. But yeah, I would say, I mean, it was interesting because we got to ride on Pirellis for the championship, and then in the Intercontinental Games, it was Japanese Dunlops. And so it was a way different of a feeling. Like, I mean, it was back to back almost, right? I was there, and then 3 weeks later, I was there again. And the front tire on the Japanese Dunlops is so much different of a profile that like the bike felt completely different. And I was like, this is the exact same bike I just rode 3 weeks ago. So yeah, I would say like I really do like Pirellis and we've had no issues really with the championship and they like we have everybody has to change tires at the same time. Like we have tire windows and like we're only putting like a 20-minute session on a tire and then we get a new set. So it's not like we're really pushing the limits on any sort of tires or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So
When I think it's difficult sometimes to listen to your parents or listen to somebody you're in a relationship with as far as like getting help. Is that I mean, with you have Andrew obviously who knows what the hell he's doing, but
yeah.
then are you more likely to listen to Jason Pridmar just because he's not Andrew?
Andrew, I actually don't have a hard time really listening to Andrew. We did have one moment last year at Donington. We got to ride Donington together, and he was saying the same thing that I was, but in a different way, and I wasn't understanding it. And so he kept repeating it, and then he was like, "Oh, it's fine. It's fine." And then he just like walked away, and he's like, "I'm done." And I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry." And then
Yeah.
like we talked about it and he's like, yeah, I figured I'd walk away before I made you upset. But like, and it was just so funny because they were saying literally the exact same thing, just in a different way. But he says I don't listen, but I really do listen because I really do value his opinion. Like the guy knows how to ride a motorcycle.
Yeah, he
So,
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got two good guys to listen to there, so
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
always tough love with them too. They're always like, hey Mallory, what are you doing? Like, get your shit together. It's always like, come on, we know you can do it.
right.
It's
How
good.
much, Mallory, of what you do? I mean, you're a civil engineer. I think civil
Mhm.
engineer is what, yeah.
Yep.
So you have that analytical mind, you have engineering, you understand how to put a bridge together. So you probably understand chassis dynamics pretty more than a lot of the average person. Does any of that enter into what you do, either in this women's WCR or in you racing in general? Do you understand suspension because of what you do for a living?
Um, I mean, I definitely have like a desire to learn like why certain things do certain things. But I would say I'm not really much of an analytical rider.
Okay.
And that's kind of why like with JP, like when he coached me, it was a little bit more of why I understood what he was saying because he's more of like a feel kind of guy or a looks like, okay, it looks like you're doing this and you can see it versus like the more analytical approach of like looking at the numbers and the data, right? I don't think about like, oh, I'm going to this much brake pressure and I want to go to this much brake pressure, right? So it's interesting because yeah, I'm an analytical person by day in my work, but when it comes to riding, I'm not that interested in the analytical part. And then yeah, like the chassis mechanics and stuff, like I'm interested in learning it, but I also don't want to get like too far into the details of like, oh, like, what is that one turn of preload gonna do, and then start thinking about that. So I try not to turn my brain on too much to that stuff.
Yeah, that's really good that it's a diversion for you. It's not like more of the same in some ways. I mean, you kind of
Mhm.
are like, I'm going to do this differently. So that's pretty cool. I guess I already sort of asked you this, but let me ask you again. The bike that you're riding this year, you have no way of knowing if it's the bike you rode last year, if it's the bike you rode at the Intercontinental Games, or do you?
We do actually, because
Okay.
they gave us a chassis list. Like we had a chassis
Okay.
number list from the Intercontinental Games, and then we had a chassis number assigned to us for the championship. So we kind of got to do a little bit of research of like who was riding what bike and like where, for those. But I was so I got the same bike at the Intercontinental Games that I had at the last round at Jerez.
Oh,
And that's what they actually gave, I think, all of the girls the same bikes that they had had at the end of the season.
okay.
So it was basically the exact same thing. And then we still had obviously like then that way the setup was kind of the same. We didn't have to change a bunch of stuff. But
Yeah.
Is
And
and I
it
this
have
year,
a different bike this year than last year.
okay, that's what I was going to ask you. It's
Mhm.
different this year than last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
is it a case of is there still a lot of changing that goes on race to race, or you kind of have that sweet spot where you just kind of tweaking a little bit here and there?
Yeah, it's mostly just tweaking it a little bit here and there. Like we're required to run a certain gearing for the first session. So like when we get to a race round, they're always like, "Hey, you have to start. Everybody has to start on this gearing for free practice, and then from there, everybody can do whatever they want." But yeah, I mean, there's not really a lot of change because we can't change front spring rates. We can only change oil level, like height and weight in the forks. We have like two or three different spring rates we can choose in the rear. Um, and then like the shock has no like ride height adjustment. The bikes are mostly stock. Like their GYCR parts are put on them, but there's like no engine work, none of that stuff. So
So
it's pretty simple.
the gearing they have you start with, is that from experience, or is the gearing way off? You would think it'd be the
It's
gearing that you would just need.
Yeah, I mean, we only have like three or four like different gearing options, and one of them probably wouldn't even work anyway because it's too short.
Right.
Because we can't change like chain length either. So
Wow.
really we only have like a 41, 42, 43 two sprocket, and then really they start us always out like in the middle, like, hey, it's 42. And then from there, like there are certain things that change it, and you find that some girls will go like, oh, like at Assen, we went from 42 to 41, and then we were like, we don't really like the 41 in a couple of spots. We're gonna go back to the 42. It doesn't change a whole lot, but it may change like the rider feeling more than anything. So,
Yeah,
and
and
they do have like 2D data that they give us. So
oh,
we do have data on like throttle and then like it's not brake pressure, but it's brake on off. So we do have a little bit of data that they give us at the end of the day, so we can look at that.
mm. Yeah, and last year I know Sonia told me that the bike, compared to the Moto Yamaha bike, completely
Yeah.
different. It's almost like
Oh
night
yeah.
and day.
Yeah.
Not with
Yeah.
Dominic Doyle's racing. It's yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I told her. I was like, the bikes that you guys are racing in MotoAmerica is a super bike, right? Like it has everything that you could need to make it a real race motorcycle, right?
Yeah.
Triple clamps, different shock, different, all these different things. And yeah, these bikes are very, very different than that.
Yeah. And this is a case, I mean, Paul will identify with this too. I mean, because he plays tennis and I didn't play much, but you know, yeah, I would have a crappy racket and then you get a better one and you're like, oh my God, I actually better than I thought I was.
Yeah.
A better
Yeah.
motorcycle, you race better, right? I mean, it just is that way, isn't
Yeah.
it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, so my bike at home, I have an R7 at home that I was using for training that I kept the same spec. And over the winter at Chuckwalla, I actually put Olin's cartridges in it because I was tired of riding on the stock forks. And it's amazing how much that even changes the motorcycle, and yeah, everybody's dealing with the same thing, so you can't complain too much. But I do find that like I feel like the front end issue is an issue for a lot of us is like it's a big hurdle. Like when you're talking about the level of experience difference between all the girls, right? It's like the girls that can adapt to having stock forks that maybe aren't as good to race on and push to the limit, is different than the girls that maybe don't have as much experience of understanding how a front end works, right?
Yeah.
So it's, we think I was like, I'd pay another $1,500 in the championship to have Hooligan's cartridges, but it's fine. Like everybody's doing the same thing. So
And you know what they
Yeah.
say? It's not the arrow, it's the Indian.
yeah, totally, totally.
Um,
Yep.
uh, I know, like a couple years ago, I wrote my story about crashing. She's
Here we
like,
I
oh,
go.
knew this would get
she's
brought
like,
up.
oh
Yeah, of
no,
course.
Uh,
of course. So, but listen, I've got a question about that. It's like
yeah.
you led the league, so to speak, in crashes, but I thought you were kind of thrown in the deep end, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of those crashes were probably being in over your head and trying
Mhm.
to make things work and trying to make them
Totally.
work in a hurry. So it wasn't
Mhm.
really fair that, I mean, I called you out because I'm going to call out whoever it is every
Yes,
year, and
totally.
you just happen to
Totally.
be the lucky girl that year. But isn't that the case? Like you're trying to play catch up from like not having any of that experience because you started at 22.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, looking back at it, it's like do I really think I was ready to do a full season of Moto America, let alone on two motorcycles? Like, heck no. But I had the sponsorship to do Super Hooligans, and then it was like, well, if I'm gonna be at 4 rounds, I might as well do nine. I already have the Super Sport bike. And so it was kind of just one of those things where I was like, now or never. I'm never gonna be ready. And yeah, I had to learn, 8 new racetracks and qualify with some of the best in our country, right? And yeah, most of my crashes were minor, like tuck in the front and somewhere, on the brakes. And it's just like, I'm going to the limit. Ty Scott's setting lap records and I'm
Right.
trying to just barely qualify at a racetrack I've never been to. And yeah, I don't have the resume to say like I'm really good at learning racetracks and have all this base of like a good foundation of being a good rider. And so, yeah, I qualified at all the rounds except for the last one, and there's a little asterisk on that one. But yeah, I'm really proud of what we did. And yeah, the crashes were like I said, minor. We finished with the same chassis and the same engines all year. And so, yeah, the number looks terrible, but at the same time, we accomplished a lot, and I wouldn't change it. And I'm glad that I didn't have any injuries or anything and
Right.
all that. But yeah, it was a very steep learning curve, and it was the same for me last year. At the women's championship, I had to learn
Yeah.
a lot.
Is the level of anxiety, can you compare the two? Like, are you, when you show up at Assen, are you more nervous than showing up at the Ridge to race Moto America, or is it just the same?
Um, it's actually funny because last year I did the Ridge Round at MotoAmerica, and after doing half the season with the Women's Championship, when I got to go back home and race at home with people a lot more people I knew, it was almost like a relief of like, let me go back to what I know and go to a place that I've had thousands of laps at and like just sit and like have fun again. So yeah, it's different because it's, when we go to the world stage, it's like I try not to put a lot of pressure on myself, but at the same time, I don't want to do bad. I don't want to like say, there's a lot of things that like weigh into it.
Right.
So it's definitely like the perception of what people think about me and who I am as a racer and all that stuff. So when I go home, it's definitely nice to go back to the roots.
Yeah. One of the things I want to mention about when you were racing in two classes with us, and this is one of the coolest things about your program that year, I think, is if you had the backing of Ducati Richmond when you were in
Mhm.
Super Hooligan on a Ducati Hyper Motard, but you
Yep.
also had their backing on well, I'm going to say it wasn't a Ducati that you were racing in Supersport. You still had that dealership or that company behind you, which is really cool. I mean, that's
Yeah,
awesome
and
that lady, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually still have her support now. So
Okay,
Doreen,
there you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
so Doreen is still my title sponsor for this championship because she really did enjoy working with me and she loves being a part of the sport. And, she is still one of my biggest supporters. And, I've always kind of told her, I say every time, I'm like, you're the reason I'm here because otherwise I wouldn't have done Moto America, and I wouldn't have been on the world stage. So, all of this can be attributed to the fact that she wanted to be a part of my program and believed in me and still does to this day. So it's really cool.
So she's one of the divas in Diva Racing then.
Yep. Yeah.
Is that
She
right?
is
I
the
mean,
diva in diva racing. Yeah.
yeah, is it,
That diva.
has she had that identity before, or did it come out this year? Is that something you guys came up with?
So her Instagram handle is Ducati Diva. So
Oh,
she's kind of
okay.
always kind of like said, she's kind of a diva. But yeah, and she actually came up with the logo last year, I think last year or the year before, because she was supporting me and she was kind of like, hey, this is kind of my personal support. I own the dealership Ducati Richmond, but if I'm supporting a program that isn't a Ducati, then maybe it makes sense to kind of rebrand to be a support
Sure.
as an individual.
Wow.
And so that's kind of where the diva racing thing started. And then, with me running my own team this year in the women's championship, it kind of gave an opportunity to kind of actually take diva racing and make it a legit racing team. So that's kind of
Yeah.
where it started.
I'm really glad you told us that background because I don't think of you as being, well, if there's any negative connotation about a diva, I don't feel like you're a
Yeah.
diva in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Andrew might believe that, but I'm not going to believe it. So,
Do they know what a diva is in Europe?
I don't know. I mean, no one's
They,
really asked me about it,
yeah,
but
they probably just
they're
have no
probably, I
idea.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew calls me a diva from time to time, but
of
he,
course,
you know.
of course. Hey, I want to ask you about last weekend, race two. So you were going to be 11th, maybe
Mhm.
even 10th, I thought, but certainly 11th. And
Yep.
then it's like, is this like Junior Cup? Is it like depending on where you are on the track in the draft? I mean, you were right there, and then what happened? And I don't think it was your fault.
Yeah. No, and there was actually a yellow flag in the last corner on the last lap. And so I was actually
Oh,
planning on making a last lap pass because I was kind of like catching them into the last corner. And I was like, all right, like I think I can line it up and I can just take both of them on the last corner. Well, so Avalon crashed, out of fourth. And so in that last corner there was a yellow. And one of the girls actually made a pass still on the yellow. And I was like, okay, well, that's weird. And then that pass stuck and she never got a penalty for it or anything. So she ended up getting 11th, even though she made a last lap pass under yellow. And then I
oh,
was too busy thinking about the yellow that I just sat back and watched it all.
yeah. You did well, you did
So
the right thing. That's weird that that happened. I mean, I guess we have to leave that right there, but that's
yeah,
interesting. But I mean, are you right about where I mean, you want to be higher up. I know that.
mhm, yeah,
Are
yeah.
you're a little bit where you were last year, maybe in the results? Is that
Yeah,
fair or what do you think?
last year last year started rough, right? So last
Okay,
year
yes.
at Misano, I got a false neutral in free practice, and when I went to run off track, the girl behind me got scared because I was probably going a lot slower than she was, and she just grabbed a handful of front brake, tucked the front, and took me out.
I remember that.
Um,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
then when I went out and when qualifying, so the next thing we know, now that we know this, is like every time the bike touches the ground, basically the triple clamps gets bent,
Wow.
or like gets tweaked. And so when we went out for qualifying, we didn't know because the stands are really weird. They use like the bottom fork leg stands and they sit crooked anyway. So I went out to go to qualifying that time and I was like crooked, I was like,
Oh,
and so I
wow.
qualified like 18th, and then I crashed out of the race one. I took the front, and then race two we ended up getting points. I think I finished like 14th or something like that. So yeah, like last year was a little bit more rough than this. And this year we just couldn't quite string together a lap to really get a really good qualifying. So I had probably my worst qualifying I've ever had in the championship, and that was really just because like Assen's a hard track to go fast at. Like because on the R7 there's no horsepower, right? It's like your roll speed in one corner means the next roll speed for the next four corners. And
Right.
so like literally I went out and warm up the next day and dropped, almost a second just in warm up. And then, we did then race one, I dropped 3 seconds from qualifying, just like that, right? Just being in the race and being able to follow somebody. And so something I really need to work on is kind of coming out of the gate, fast like that, but it's so hard when we don't get a lot of riding time either. We
So
have 25 minutes of practice and then it's qualifying.
so
So,
that was the opening round of this year's championship was at
yep,
Assen. Okay.
yep,
And that's
yeah.
probably the most difficult track you'll go to as far as learning it.
Yeah, I think, so this year we go to Magny-Cours and Balaton are the next two that we go to that we haven't been to. So, and Balaton's a little bit hard to get a track day at, so it'll be hard to get there. And then I don't know if I'll get a chance to ride Magny-Cours beforehand. So it's just really hard to get like a bike sorted and the track day
Right.
sorted and the travel and logistics. And so, as much as it's like money is always an issue too, it's at the championship, you're not going to say, well, it's, I can't afford it. It's like you just got to kind of do it. But yeah, it's the timing of everything, and of course, everybody's trying to do the same thing,
And
So
it's just one race a weekend, not two, right?
it's two,
Oh,
one,
it is
one
Yeah.
two.
one on Saturday,
Okay.
one on Sunday.
Okay, cool. That's a big
Yeah,
help.
yeah. So I mean, we qualified 20th and finished what did it 15th and 13th.
Yeah,
So
it's good.
it's okay. Yeah, it's not where I want to be, but it's so points on the board. We had solid finishes, and I was kind of hoping it'd be raining. It was like it rained in the morning, warm up on Sunday.
Yeah.
And we got seventh, but we had clear track on the last lap before the checkered. It would have been better, but I really want to get a rain race because I think we could do really good. We've
Oh,
shown a couple times that we could kind of be up there in the front in a rain race, so I'm kind of hoping that it'll happen this year. It didn't last year, but
I didn't realize that you didn't race in the rain there. I thought you might have just because there was so much rain. And I thought that's weird. It didn't happen for you. Wow. That's interesting.
yeah, we had well because Magny-Cours rained last year. We weren't at Magny-Cours, and then I can't remember what other rounds, but like Estoril was crazy. It was like it rained in the morning and then it was like dry by our race, and so we had a lot of moments where like at Cremona, same thing. It rained in I think practice or warm up or something, but didn't rain in our race. So it's like it's just annoying because it's like it always rains like for part of it, but never for the actual race.
Yeah. Um, so do you I know you know Garrett Gerloff. Do you talk to him? Does he come around? Do you go around? How what do you see him?
Yeah, Tim Robinson actually
Yeah,
checks in with
Tim.
Sonia and I a
Yeah.
bunch. Yeah, so he checks in with us, make sure we're okay. Garrett's pretty busy most of the time. Last year I kind of bugged him a little bit and asked him some questions and talked to him and met their manager Camilla. And so they were really nice and said, anytime come into our box. And since Garrett switched teams, I haven't really reestablished the relationship of just coming into their box. I always
Right.
feel
Yeah.
weird. I'm like, it's fine, like no one cares, but I'm just like, hi. So
That's cool that you're doing
um
that though. Yeah, and I mean Tim was at Barber with this, as I'm sure you know, and he mentioned he was going over there. So he said he was going to get
yeah,
quotes from you guys like he did, which is great that he told us what was going on. And I mean he's been around Garrett for gosh since Garrett was 14 or even before
wow.
that. So and he's really been dedicated to helping him a lot. So and I
Yeah,
mean
he's great.
we all feel for Garrett with his situation. So
Yeah.
we don't know if he's coming back over here next year or not, but we think he might want to. So it'd be,
Yeah.
I don't want him to tuck tail and run, but God, he would be in the deep end. He would be
Yeah.
right up at the pointy end with us again, no doubt about it. So
It's so hard, like no one really talks. I mean, people talk about it, but like coming over to Europe, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, it must be so easy to go race and do this thing. Like it's probably blah blah blah." Everybody sitting on their couches watching the races can always say that. But like last year for me, it was really validating at the Intercontinental Games when Blake and Hayden and all them came over and Blake and them were like, wait, these bikes don't have steering stabilizers. Wait, these bikes don't have, and I was like, no, they don't have that. And then like, Blake and even like, Matt Chapin, he was like, Matt Chapin was like, I was riding at the limit and he's like, and Mahindra just went by me with his
he
wheels
told
like
us
going
that.
sideways. And he was like, it's insane. Like these kids are like, so like Blake sat and told me and was like, wait, Mallory, how fast did you go here? And I was like, oh, I went this fast, on the Pirellis though. So it's different. And he was just like, props to you. Like that's crazy that you went that fast. And like it was really cool to me to like be able to like get that validation from someone like Blake, who's an amazing rider, and like be able to battle it out with those guys, and kind of just get the like reconfirmation that like these girls and like this competition over here in Europe is next level.
Yeah.
So it was cool to like kind of get that validation from them as well.
Yeah, and poor Andrew was sick all weekend, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he
And
got sick on the way there. Yeah, and then he had some crew members that made some interesting choices on his bike setup, and yeah, he just got the bad end of the stick on that one. So,
yeah,
yeah, unfortunately, he didn't have the best weekend, but it was really cool to be teammates with him. I never
that's
thought that would
cool.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
We thought so. Actually, you told us this. So Michael Gilbert, the other part of the Wolf Pack with JP43 and all that, who I know you know really well, is at Le Mans this weekend. And
Mhm.
you told me that you had an opportunity to possibly do the R7 Endurance, but it's a little spendy, as you said, which I understand. But
Yeah.
those are obviously different bikes. Tell us about that series. Is it a spec endurance class that goes around with the EWC? Is that what it is?
Yeah, so they announced it this year that they're doing 2 rounds with the EWC.
Okay.
So it's basically a support class with them. So it's Le Mans and Spa, and they're just doing an 80-minute endurance race, and it's a relay race. So it's two bikes, two people, and then basically you swap the transponder from one bike to the other. So no refuel, no tire changes. So it's a little bit like less like it's endurance, but not really like really great endurance. So yeah, I didn't quite find a bike in time for Le Mans, but it sounds like I might be doing Spa, which is cool because I
Oh.
was like, I really want to ride Spa. So, and granted, on the R7, everybody's like, it's gonna be so boring because the track's so big, but it'll be really cool to be able to ride that. So I think we're still in the works of planning that, but I think we might be able to do that.
And Andrew raced at Spa last year with
Hmm.
Jason and Michael.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that'd be cool if you could do it as well. Is that R7 series endurance? I don't know the answer to this. Is it a women's only or is it anybody? Oh, it's
No, it's
anybody.
anybody. And
Okay.
kind of in Europe, you're kind of seeing it too, where like a lot of the R7 Cup classes are becoming bigger. So basically they just have a set rule book and most of the time these R7s are going to be better. Like they're going to have cartridges, but they're mostly the same where it's stock engines, a lot of stock parts still. And like I said, just mainly just some suspension updates. And a lot of these championships are now adding them. So like the European like Superbike class or European Superbike championship is adding an R7 Cup race at like a bunch of different rounds. And so there's a lot of these R7 classes popping up, and it's actually like pretty big over here now. So that's kind of, I think, a reason for the Endurance World Championship adding it as well.
And were there any riders in your championship that are going to race at Le Mans in the teams?
I don't know.
Okay.
I had talked to Taylor, the Australian, and
Yep. She's
she
nice.
was yeah, and she has a bike over in Europe with her van. So I asked her, I said, "Hey, if I can find a bike and we do this, would you want to do it with me?" And she was all for it, but I couldn't find another bike, so then it kind of just and then I saw the entry fee was like 3,800 euro or something like that. And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like my money might be better spent somewhere else. So
Well, so that underscores something, Mallory. So there, you can state this; it's fact, I believe. There's a little bit of the haves and have-nots in that women's WCR. I mean, isn't there?
oh,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely like see like it's hard for a lot of girls logistically outside of Europe to do the thing that all these other girls are doing, and being away from home, being so far. Like it's like when we show up at testing and like the Spanish girls show up with their bodywork painted already, they had bodywork they got from JAR, they took it home, they painted it, they brought it in, it's all nice. And we're like stickering up vinyl trackside, like trying to get it to look good before our pictures, and like it's just like there's only so much, like I'm preparing so much and I'm like I know that I can do all this. I've done it before, right? Like the logistics are a lot easier than like Moto America, but at the same time it's hard because it's, over the pond. So it's a
Yeah.
lot harder to get the, supplies and everything over here. So
Yeah. What's the food situation for you? Have you gotten sick yet? You okay about how you're feeding yourself?
yeah, I haven't actually gotten sick yet, knock on wood. No, the food's been pretty good. I use Google a lot to like find different places with good reviews and just kind of use that to go by. And yeah, I mean, when I stay at like Airbnbs and stuff, I really try to like just cook food in at my house. But it's so hard because I'm like at the grocery store scanning all the different things, like trying to
Oh
figure out what
yeah.
each thing means. Like on a
Wow.
little translate app, and I'm like, oh, okay, like that's not what I want, or this, that, or the other. And
At
it's
least you can
definitely
count
been a
on the
challenge.
fact that the food there is better than here. At least the stuff you
It's
can
so,
buy.
yeah, the food's so good. Like even just being over here, I don't feel bloated. I lose so much weight just by like eating better, but like by
Right.
Oh,
trying to eat better, right? Like it's interesting. Like
Yeah,
it's
the
just
gluten
wow.
and all that stuff is
hmm
like there's
Yeah.
yeah, it's
they
crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
they have
That's
that sorted out
interesting.
better than us.
Yeah.
Wow. We always heard these horror stories from back in the day, but I guess it's changed. It used to be, it was tougher to find the right thing to eat over there in the past, but maybe it's actually better now than it was in this country. That's
I
interesting.
think I think Europe is good. I think there's other countries that aren't, right? And they're
Okay.
definitely like
Right.
I talked to Anna a little bit about, like when she did MotoGP and when they go to like Thailand and stuff, it's hard. Like, some of those places that are a little bit more remote, like Malaysia, like all those places are a little bit harder. Like she's like, yeah, we don't trust the water. We bring our own water. And like
Oh
there
yeah.
is there is other countries like in MotoGP that are a lot more a
Yeah.
lot more scary.
Yeah, how is she, Mallory? I mean, I've seen her a couple times at Coda, and I always go over. I mean, she has no idea who I am. I understand that, but I'm a fan. I mean, I just go over and I just say, you're really cool. I like your riding. You actually ride so well, and all
hmm
that. I mean, she's a good person, right? Is she a good person? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, she's great. She's helped me a bunch with some of the stuff over here being in Spain, and she's always been really helpful when I like ask her questions about stuff. And yeah, she's been really great support for me over here for sure.
That's really good to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're over there. You're staying over there. You're going to come back at some point. You are you going to race? Are you going to race at Ridge?
Yeah, I am actually.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm
cool.
gonna race in twins and super hooligans. So we're gonna revamp my R7 and make it a proper Moto America R7, which may ruin coming back to the championship for me. I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. But our plan is Don with Superbike Underground is gonna build a Superbike R7, and then we're gonna still race the Hyper Motard and Super Hooligans. So
Great. That's
That's
really good.
awesome.
yeah.
Just Ridge, just that round.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing else really fits into the schedule, unfortunately. So as much as
Well,
we wanted to do a couple other ones, it doesn't quite fit in.
man, I'm glad it does fit in that you can go to your home track. That's pretty awesome, right? That's kind of
Yeah.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so after Cremona, I'm gonna come back on the Monday after Cremona on May 5th. And then we basically have like a 9-week break in our schedule where we don't have another round until Donington in July.
Yeah.
So it kind of works out perfect because then I'm home for May and June and then can like get stuff ready in May and then race in June. So it works out really good.
All right, I'm gonna stick my neck out on something here. How's it going with your day job?
It's good. Yeah, it's I started a new job. It's actually based out of
Oh.
Austin, Texas. Probably a little over 6 months ago.
Oh, okay.
I had gotten a fully remote gig last year too, but the company wasn't quite what I wanted. And so I kind of just like started browsing at the end of last year. I actually took an interview when I was in Spain last year and interviewed for a place. And so now I'm doing same thing, civil site engineering stuff and just fully remote. So I actually just work on projects while I'm here and they know I'm here. So, when I had my interview, I'm very forthcoming with it and said, hey, like they were like, hey, would you be interested in moving to Texas? I was like, well, here's the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I got this little thing.
Yeah, I'm like, my mom lives in Dallas and I do like Texas, and maybe some point I might live there. But right now I'm doing this thing where I'm traveling to Europe and racing motorcycles. So they're really understanding about it all. And as long as I hit my deliverables and all that stuff and still crank out work, like they're not really too concerned.
That's a
Wow,
good situation.
yeah, it's awesome to hear because I didn't want it to be, I wasn't sure. I didn't want it to be, oh, you moved on to a different job because of this issue, and it wasn't that at all. You made that decision, so that's good to hear. It's good that we
Yeah,
can do
yeah, it
that.
was it was really hard because I worked with the same people before I left that job and got the fully remote gig. I worked with the same people for about 7 years. And so I actually just had a conversation with one of my old coworkers who's a really good friend of mine yesterday and check in with him randomly from here and there. And he was like, I really miss you at work all the time, and it was a really hard decision, but they understood, like, they were like, hey, you can take a week off with no pay when you go and race and then come back. And I'm like, yeah, but engineering doesn't really just stop when I'm gone. And now everybody's going to take up the slack. And like, I just didn't want that. I didn't want to be a bad engineer with them because they're people I care about. And like, I'm not trying to be a bad engineer, but at the same time, I know that I have a lot of things going on and I'm not going to be able to invest 100% of my effort into engineering right now. So it's a balancing act where, it's hard because I want to do a good job at work, but also racing is really important right now and I don't want to half-ass that either. So
Right,
Right.
right.
it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad about your commitment and the commitment that Sonia has too. I mean, speaking of the Americans, there is
Hmm.
something I want to ask you about. I'm gonna make you the spokesperson and put you on the spot here for this because
Oh
my
no.
my background is in advertising and copywriting and naming products and taglines and all that. So branding is cool. I love branding. What is with the god awful women's circuit racing name? What does that even mean? Why nobody else is circuit racing? What is that? You know why it's called
Oh,
that? I mean.
I don't know why. And I hate it because they're like, and when we tag anything, it's always World WCR. Like you gotta call it that. And then yeah, it's like when I make posts about the FIM Women's Circuit Racing World Championship, like it's just so many words. Like I
It
don't know.
is.
Yeah,
Like
it's a little wordy.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, we have it too. I mean, even with you, I mean, we were tagging all of that FIM live and all that women's WCR and all that. Or
Hmm.
I get it wrong. It's world. Is it world WCR? No,
Yeah.
women's. Okay,
Women's Circuit
Yeah.
Racing World Championship. I wrote it down
okay,
this morning.
Yeah, yeah. So it's the tag is World WCR. So it's
yeah.
World, which doesn't make any sense because it's like World Women's Circuit Racing, I think is what it's supposed to be
Yes, it
like for the
is.
tag, but that doesn't match the actual
Well,
long name.
yeah, and it's like World Superbike. It's the Superbike World Championship, but they call it World SBK. So it is.
Yeah.
They do the same thing with that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard. But that circuit thing, I don't. It implies that maybe there's a part of it that's not going to be circuit stuff. It's going to be maybe off road or something. I don't know.
Right.
Did,
Yeah,
did they ever
maybe.
t did they ever tell you any of that? That there's another
No.
part of it? Okay,
No.
okay.
No, the only thing I know is that the Intercontinental Games is going to happen again next year, and they're going to do like motocross or a dirt portion of that as well at the same time. So I do
That's
know
cool.
that, but that's the only thing I know about anything that's going on behind the scenes.
Different riders or riders doing the
I think
two
it's different
disciplines?
riders, so they're going to have two
Okay,
different events at the same time. Yeah, so they'll
Yeah.
have
okay.
circuit racing and then they'll have a dirt section as well.
Do you know if you'll do Intercontinental Games again?
I hope so. I had a lot
Okay.
of fun. So I
I
mean I would hope, but I mean it's not up to me of who they pick for the
Yeah,
team, but
and I believe it's the AMA. I think it's Ken Salon and those
mhm,
guys.
yeah.
Bill
Yep.
Cumbo, I believe, is
Hmm.
who invited you
Yep.
guys.
Yep.
Did you talk to him personally about doing this?
Yeah, so last year at the Ridge round, he mentioned it to me and he said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing something like this? And also, who would you recommend for some people on the team?" And it was so funny because I mentioned Andrew at that point too, and he was like, "Andrew? Who's Andrew?" And I was like, "Come on, Bill."
What? What?
He just
Andrew
he couldn't even
Andrew
remember it. I was like, "What?"
Andrew told me
Um,
he actually even went and applied for that thing. He actually submitted his information.
Yeah,
So,
because I told Bill to pick him, and then he
oh,
was like, "Oh, he's like, hey, you give me that. Here's an application. Have him fill out one and two." And I was like, "Cool, great." So we both filled out the application, and then I got an email that said I got picked, and Andrew didn't. And I was like,
Hmm.
"Sorry." But
That would
two-time
hurt the
yeah,
diva's feelings.
yeah,
two two-time stock 1000 champion. I
I
mean,
know. Give Bill shit about that because yeah,
yeah.
it was so funny.
Well, he's back this year, and you're gonna have to watch from afar a little bit. Are you
I
gonna be
know.
coming to any of our rounds
Mhm.
other than Ridge?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
So the plan is for me to come to all the rest of the rounds. So,
Oh, cool.
um, we'll see as far as the rest of the Super Stock 1000 rounds. So I'll miss the first one, and then all the
oh,
rest of them I do
Okay.
plan on coming to. So, yeah, there's no other conflicts with the schedule, I don't think. So I'll be at all those. And I
okay.
was kind of waiting. I helped manage a Supersport team for the Daytona 200. Well, I did manage the team, and he was maybe doing the full season of Supersport, and so I was gonna try to manage that while also doing my stuff. But I'm not sure if he's doing the full season of Supersport yet. So
Well,
either way.
please share. Who is this person? What is the team?
Oh, it
Oh,
was Chris Sarbora with Hot Sauce Racing.
oh yeah.
Yeah, so he raced up in Wimra back in the day with us, so that's how I met him. And then Don works with him as well as far as like putting together the bikes and stuff. So my crew chief is his crew chief. So
Okay.
that's kind of how we got. And I was like, hey, I owe Don, my crew chief a lot for all the things that he helped me with last year. So I was like, hey, can I help you and Chris out for your guys' stuff as well, since I know all the logistics stuff behind the scenes. So
Yeah, that's cool. That's really
yeah.
cool. And I know you probably have much to deal much with Andy DeBrino?
Yeah, I see him from
Yeah.
time to time. We actually did a CF Moto shoot for the last year's 2024 bike launch. We did like commercials and stuff for that together. It was really fun.
Oh, you rode the
Yeah.
bikes?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
last year when they did the motorcycle releases, we did riding at the Ridge and we did some like street riding as well. But it was really fun because we got to like ride the bikes at the Ridge together, like through a couple like corners. We had to like retake, and then we got to ride the Ridge backwards a little bit, and it was cool because it was like Andy was like, okay, like I at least trust you to like not run into me or anything. I was like, good.
Yeah,
That's good.
that's a
So no,
positive.
it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
All right, you
Well,
done there, Sean?
I think I am. So your next race is when is it?
It is 2 weeks from now, so not next weekend, but the following.
Same
So,
same weekend as Road
Road Atlanta,
Atlanta.
yeah.
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to MotoGP Jerez next weekend. So I'm gonna go hang out there and go do some media stuff. And so I fly there to Jerez on Thursday, and then I'll fly to Milan on Monday, and then yeah, it'll be in Italy. We're going to Cremona for the second one.
Cremona.
So.
That's right.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, we wish you well, and it's so cool that you're doing this, having this adventure. I mean, we're enjoying the adventure right along with us, and we appreciate the input that you're providing us so that we can cover you, Mallory. It's
Of
great that
course.
we can
Yeah,
kind of follow you. So thank you for all of
I
that,
appreciate it.
and thanks for being on with us. Finally, we got you on. It's good. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. No, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us and be safe and we'll see you at the next round.
Sounds good. Thanks,
All
guys.
right, thank you.
Thank you.